Seeing that it's 7:02, I'll call the meeting to order. All right. Before we get started, all right, let me go through this. Before we get started, let's introduce everyone on this meeting. I'm Sandy Brock. When I call your name, please confirm you can hear me by verifying that you are present. So we'll start with the commissioners. Travis,
I'm here.
Jonathan,
Present.
Patrick,
Here.
and Emily.
Present.
Thank you. And we'll go with staff. Leah
I'm here.
and Jan.
Present.
Thank you very much. And as far as speakers go, we have Norm Hill, if I want to be official.
Yes, I'm here.
All right, thank you. This open meeting of the Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely via Zoom pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order, as most recently extended on March 29th, 2023. Access information for the public has been provided on the town website. This meeting is being recorded. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. If you are using the dial in by telephone feature, you can mute yourself by pressing *6. As chair, I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. Please note that you will not have screen sharing privileges, but staff can display any visuals per your cue. After speakers conclude their remarks, I will invite each commissioner to provide any comments, questions, or motions. After the commissioners have spoken, I will allow public comment to be spoken by participants. Participants must use the raise hand feature by clicking the hand icon at the bottom right of the Zoom menu bar to indicate they would like to speak. If you are using dial in by telephone feature, press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute when you are called upon. Participants who raise their hand will be recognized one at a time and will be promoted to speak. Public comments will be followed by commission and applicant responses. Finally, each vote taken will be conducted by a roll call vote. As a reminder, the commission is concerned with state and town wetlands and stormwater regulations. Concerns outside this purview need to be addressed by the appropriate boards. For example, road conditions must be addressed with the select board and traffic concerns must be addressed with the planning board. All right, you would think that I would have this all memorized and wouldn't have to read it from a page. That is never going to happen. Okay, so that it's 7:04. So any action items to discuss, or is there any discussion items we should take first?
So we actually don't have anything with a time certain. It's a continuation. So if you want to just jump right into that hearing, we certainly can.
Oh, I will be happy to do that. All right. I need to go back to my other pages here. And I know I'll defer to Jonathan. I have not committed yet. I keep switching, but I will figure out someday which one, paper or just the displays. Okay. So seeing that it is a continuance and not time certain, and this is 188 Providence, correct?
Yes.
Very good. Pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, the Grafton Stormwater Management Bylaw, and the Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, the Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing to act upon a notice of intent, application for Grafton Stormwater Bylaw permit, and application for Grafton Wetlands Bylaw permit for the construction of an apartment complex at 188 Providence Road. All right.
Good evening. This is Norman Hill. Can you all hear me okay?
Can hear you just fine. Go ahead and update us, please.
Sure. So we now have a DEP file number for this job. And I'm very pleased to announce that last evening, the Grafton Planning Board voted to approve the site plan and the special permit for the multifamily housing. So we now have a fixed target with the Planning Board. They've approved this plan. So at our last meeting, Leah had raised several questions. One was in regard to street sweeping, which is the first 10% TSS removal for our stormwater report. And to address that, we revised the operation and maintenance plan. There's now a chart in that plan that speaks to street sweeping, when it will be done and who will do it. And there's an inspection sheet as well in that maintenance plan. The second question Leah raised was in regard to you have a regulation that you should never alter have more than 5 acres under construction at one time. So we went back and we looked at our phasing plan, and phase 1 was 5.2 acres, to my surprise. So we divided phase one into phase 1A and phase 1B. So phase 1A would be done first, and that would simply lumen seed the three pads in the middle of the drawing there. Those three building pads would be graded out and lumen seeded. And then that would be phase 1A. So once that grass is growing on those building pads, then that land would no longer be under construction. And then the remaining portion of 1A would be built. And then once that is stabilized, then they could start with the construction of those three buildings. Now, the other question that was raised had to do with a little isolated area where we had flags 8, 4, 5, and 6. We've added those back to the plan and now show a 25-foot no disturb zone and a 100-foot buffer zone. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right. Thank you. Leah, you want to update on what your report says?
Sure. So just as a side note, Patrick and Emily have missed 2 sessions of this, so they would be ineligible voters. So it's up to the other 3
Okay.
on this one. The phasing, Norm, can you just take us through 1A and 1B one more time? I just want to make sure I have that straight.
Yeah, if you look at the blue rectangle around the 2 buildings upper right and the 1 building upper left. So those 3 pads would be loomed and seeded. First, they might backblade it with a boulder. I mean, it's always was disturbed 30 years ago, but you've got some brush in there, and you've got some saplings and some grasses. So that would be backbladed smooth, and then it would be loomed. And it's actually already loomed, so they probably just seed it. Then once that grass was growing and that area was all stabilized, then that would no longer be part of the disturbed area.
Okay, so the footprint of the 3 buildings would be prepped and seeded first, and then the rest of everything north of the blue line
Correct.
the remainder would be cleared after that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I told them to put a construction fence up as well around those pads.
Okay.
So we don't want those pads to disturbed again during all of the construction of the sewer and the water, the driveways and the detention areas. Yeah.
Okay, then that addresses one of my concerns. I was thinking you were clearing everything north of the blue line, short of the building pads first.
No, you can actually
Okay.
drive into that site now. There's 2 ramps that go down into there.
Yeah.
So you can drive a truck or a bulldozer or whatever right down in there right now. So he would bring his bulldozer down, backblade that area smooth and then seed it.
Okay, then that takes care of one of my concerns. The other was, Jan, if you can pull up from the larger plan set, sheet C8. And I think it's page 8 as well. So you have this little plan in the corner that I suspect was something for the planning board, but it talks about usable common open space. And I just wanted to know plans for that. All the areas shaded in green, are they to remain woods and it's just that folks can, walk?
They will all remain woods, but I must tell you that at last night's meeting, we agreed to revise this plan. Fiona had said that the lower areas down by Fisherville Pond, you'd have to cross a power easement to get to them. And so she asked us to take that away from the recreational area. And again, the one on the right, that little triangle at the very right, you'd have to walk through the wetlands to get to that. So she's asked us, and we've agreed to back that out as a potential recreation area. So they've got a requirement, because there's 120 units, you need 120,000 square feet of recreation area, and we're almost double that. So we're willing to pull out those little green areas there that I mentioned.
Okay, but are there any plans for any development of sorts of that area, or it's supposed to just remain woods?
No trails, no development, no, those will all be untouched.
Okay, then the only other comment I have for the commission now is that everything from Graves has been satisfied. Beyond that, I just have potential special conditions when you're ready to discuss those.
All right, sounds good. I only have one question. Norm, when you indicated that, you'd come down and flatten out that area, so that flatten out the building areas. Basically, you don't have to do a big fill, a big cut or anything. It's really just prepping it for the 3 building pads.
Yeah, that's correct. I believe the change in topography is less than 2 feet. This site had been prepared for a supermarket back in 1983. It was going to be a big supermarket. So they get down in there then and they flattened everything out at that time.
Okay, I just want to make sure there's not a lot of earth moving around for that, but it sounds like it's
No,
pretty localized.
No.
Okay, so I will go around to the voting members to see if they have any questions or comments. So Jonathan, anything based on these latest plans or any conditions?
No, I didn't have any questions or comments.
All right, great. Travis, any questions or comments based on these updated plans?
So everything in green, the usable common open space, it looks to me like it's beyond the limit of disturbance. So that's not going to be cleared and seeded to turf
Correct.
grass, correct?
Correct. It's just going to stay in natural woods as it is right now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay, so could we entertain like a condition that
exactly.
confirms
That's
that?
Yep.
Okay.
I think that's
That's I think that's great. I just wanted to confirm that. So no other questions though.
all right, great. Leah, you want to go through what some of your suggestions for special conditions?
Sure. Well, I'll add in the one that we just discussed so that
Yep.
the areas in green are to remain woods and not be developed. We will need an updated SWIP before commencement of work, just to get the contact info of the responsible parties. That was the only piece missing from what you submitted before. Suggesting the commission hold a bond for erosion control, site stabilization, and stormwater management. If planning's requiring a bond of any kind, we can do it in conjunction with them to make sure it's not doubled up on. The stormwater basins will not be fully excavated until their temporary use during construction is over. Each phase must be stabilized, whether temporarily or permanently, before the next phase begins.
Mhm.
Stormwater infiltration units shall be maintained in good working order. Should they become inoperable, a replacement will be installed or a comparable solution proposed to the commission. And then this last one touches on the street sweeping. So I have the stormwater operation and maintenance plan shall be implemented, including snow not to be pushed into the stormwater infrastructure.
Mhm.
The street sweeping schedule is to be followed, especially the monthly frequency with the high efficiency vacuum sweeper. And I would ask for the logs of those sweeps being done to be submitted to the commission.
Mhm.
I also am asking for like proof, like whether it's a receipt, if it's like something that you rent, proof of the type of machinery used, so we are sure it's that specific type of sweeper. And then any material collected during that sweeping will be disposed of off-site.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree with I agree with that, and that should be done through that should be fairly easy information to get from a vendor, but I think it's important to include each one of those.
Mhm.
All right, so at this time, I'll open up the meeting to anyone in the public. And I will kind of leave that there, and I will ask the commissioners voting if they have anything to suggest on tweaking any of these conditions, or if they have any other comments or conditions. So Travis, anything else other than the previous one you proposed?
Nope, nothing else.
Jonathan?
Just with the comment on the vac sweeper, I wouldn't. So this is going to happen forever, or is this?
No, it is forever because it's part of the O&M plan. It's part of their approach to removing Total suspended solids, they're taking credit for the 10%, which,
Right.
yeah, that's why. I mean, it's not just during
No, I
construction. Yeah.
understood. No, where I was going with that was if you define, I don't know if there's a specification for that type of thing, or just saying a vacuum sweeper that actually removes and does this act, as opposed to saying use a John Deere vacuum sweeper or something. I don't know how we would structure that to make sure, because if in 5 years or 10 years or whatever, that's a different system or there's a different way to do it. I don't know if they'd have to come back before us if they had to change something, if we had a special condition in there that affected the long-term maintenance, or if it's, you know,
I totally understand. I think
if
maybe,
they're locked into one piece of machinery. You know what I'm saying? I just saying we should give them levity to perform the action with whatever the typical machinery of the time is. You know, if this is going to be around for 100 years or 50
Right.
years, you know.
so Leah, I'm guessing that this wording is coming right out of the stormwater handbook, correct?
Correct.
So I would suggest adding to this. So this, when it says high efficiency vacuum sweeper, that's in the actual handbook. I would suggest that we add in parenthesis or what's approved by the most
MEC.
current, the most current Mass DEP stormwater handbook.
Okay.
So then if the technology changes or becomes more restrictive or anything like that, then they're meeting what's in the handbook as per se something else. So we're not going to get into any details as far as the amount of grit it needs to pick up and the size or anything like that. I would stick with the handbook just so that it's consistent.
Yeah.
So
That was my only point. Was I just figured we'd want to future proof it and change so it doesn't have to come back in front of us in 5 years or 8 years or whatever if they get a new vacuum sweeper that's not exactly the same, whatever.
right.
So
I mean, you go back 20 years ago and it was just sweepers. It was just the brush and stuff. The brushes that swept it up, and obviously the vacuum sweeper is something that's not new, but is relatively new as opposed to the length of the regulations. And then moving forward, it would only change, or they would only update it if they want to switch to something that was in the handbook itself.
Yeah.
So, all right. So
no other questions or comments. That was the only one.
that's great. And then as far as Jan, anyone from the public?
Nothing from the public.
All right. Thank you very much. Having said that, if the applicant, which I think you, Norm just said, you have no other comments?
No, we would accept those conditions.
All right, thank you very much. Based on that, do I have a motion to close the hearing and issue the order of permits with the special conditions just discussed?
Sure, I'll move to close the hearing and issue order of conditions and permits for 188 Providence Road with the special conditions as discussed.
All right, thank you very much.
Second.
Second? You got a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Again, I'll only be calling on those members, commission members that actually have been at all the meetings, so they are okay to vote. So, Jonathan,
Yes.
Travis,
Yes.
I am also a yes. The motion carries.
Thank you very much. Everyone stay well. Thank you.
You too.
Thanks, Norm.
Thank you.
All right. Got a couple discussion items and the meeting minutes. Which do you recommend to take first?
Do you want to read in and continue the other hearing just in case anyone's following along for that?
That would be a good idea. All right, and this is the MassDOT one. Okay, Millbury Street. All right. Pursuant to the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act and the Grafton Wetlands Protection Bylaw, Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing via Zoom to act upon a notice of intent application for Grafton Wetlands Bylaw permit for the construction of sidewalks and road improvements on Millbury Street. The applicant has requested a continuance to January 9th, 2024. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to continue the hearing for Millbury Street to January 9th, 2024.
Yeah, it's a little scary to say
Second.
that. And then we got a motion and a second. I will go and do a roll call vote. Travis,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
I am also a yes. It is unanimous. It is continued to January 9th. Okay. All right. Back to discussion items. Anyone first?
We can go with 116 Creeper Hill Road.
Okay. Do you want to give us the background on that one?
Sure. So back this past summer, we started discussions about unpermitted fill, which came to our attention via National Grid. So they own the land used to access the power lines and such, but also a house beyond that. So the homeowner holds an easement over that land. So at that time, we discussed with the easement holder, told him he should hire a wetland scientist to document the fill that was done and determine a remediation plan and have that consultant take him through proper permitting to rectify the situation. I have since met with the easement holder and his wetland scientist on Zoom. I saw the plan where they were documenting the fill areas, and I continued to urge them to figure out the best remediation plan to not only address the violation, but satisfy the needs of the homeowner and also Grid. A few weeks later, we found out that the homeowner went ahead and removed that fill. So I urged him and his wetland scientist to attend this meeting. We also did invite National Grid, who's in the attendees list. I don't think the message is getting across that it's a protected resource area and proper permitting and the proper channels need to be followed through. These things can't just occur on a whim out, on a weekend. So we're all here now to discuss what's happened and where we go from here. And I'll hold off on my formal recommendation until we talk further.
Okay, so representative from National Grid is here. Is the homeowner here also?
I do not see the
Yes.
homeowner. I do
Yes.
see. Oh, he is here.
He's retained my name. I sent him the Zoom link.
Got it.
Okay. So would you like just to give us an update?
Sure thing. So yeah, Leah gave a good background there. Do you mind if I share my screen and just
That's no, anything you want to share, you need to send to Leah or Jan ahead of time.
got it.
So
Yeah, so obviously there was this wetland fill along this access road to the homeowner Paulo's home. It was done to kind of improve the access, give some more area for snow storage. The road is very low and really abuts right up against wetlands on one side and then pretty close to the wetlands on the other side as well. So it can flood in large rain events and that sort of thing. So I think the intention was to make the road more accessible for him to access his home. It is no doubt on National Grid's land, and I see that Erin is in here. She is the environmental scientist from National Grid, who I was coordinating with a bit. So yes, and then the homeowner did go ahead and remove that fill before pulling any permits, which I think was done with the correct intention, but without following the correct channels. So I was out on the site earlier today to look around. I do believe that the vast majority of that fill has been removed. It definitely needs a little bit more of a cleanup, probably just with some hand tools and to actually export that filled material, which is kind of in a bit of a berm along the side of the road at the moment. So that is the update from our end. I'm happy to answer any questions that the commission might have, or entertain any thoughts on the best way to approach this.
okay, and if you could you just give your name and so forth for the
Apologies. Yes,
recording?
my name is Chris Frattaroli. I'm a wetland scientist with Goddard Consulting.
All right,
And
thanks.
if I may, as the homeowner, just give a background why
Could
this
you?
was.
Yeah, sorry about that. That absolutely you can definitely speak and so forth. If you could just give your name and address for the record, because it's all recorded
Yes,
and it's official.
yes, I'm Paulo Martins, and it's 1 Sargent Island. And
All right.
historically, this used my property is on island that was connected to the mainland many years ago, and it was basically this road is artificially made, and it's basically in wetland, and it's very narrow, and I am the only person that lives in this end of the road that has to go through the National Grid property in order to access. And it's very narrow. And when it snows on Lake Quinsigamon, Flint Pond, all this snow is blown up, and it's usually in that area we have like 2 feet of snow or more, and I have no area to move this snow when I plow, and it's the only access to my property, and I'm the only one that maintain the road. So it's not National Grid that does the maintenance. So all the snow removal is done by myself, and that's very inconvenient. And I basically graded the road, and that field went probably 4 feet. In other areas, like 6 feet from the margin of the road. And after I thought that I could keep that, and after discussing with the conservation and my wetland specialist, the recommendation was that if it was to get to keep this field or extension of 6 feet to the road, we would need to replicate the area in wetland, and that would require a lot of permits and would be extremely expensive. So I went ahead and remove it because I thought that was the right thing to do, since there was no other option. But I didn't know that we needed to get permit for that.
Yep. So a few things, yes, you have the permit considerations. The second part is, that's an easement over property that's owned by the National Grid. So anything that you do in that area, and we would look for it on any permits, is to make sure that National Grid is aware of the work and that they've approved the work. I mean, that's really that's basic law and common law that, there's nothing wrong with doing it. You just have to go through the right channels to get it done. And as you had
I
mentioned,
agree.
yeah. And so that's really, our concern. It's not like we have, oh, you can't do this, or you have to, whatever. It's really about just following the permitting. And the reason for that is so that we understand that is an easement and it's actually owned by someone else. So it's important to make sure the owner of their land is part of the process. And the second part is that we need to document it so that when someone comes back, or 10 or 20 years, they'll know that this fill has been installed legally and it met all the regulations at that time. So there's no questions, and that it can stay and so forth. So the choice of whether you want to pursue the permitting is totally up to you as a homeowner, but it has to be done through and in conjunction with National Grid, and have the correct permitting process. So at this point, we understand that you kind of removed it because you thinking that you were doing the right things to solve this. More right now, we need to just make sure it's documented and that there's no unintended consequences of those actions or impacts to the wetlands. So, Leah, I know that you had a recommendation if we want to kind of talk about that approach. And I think it's really about documenting everything that happened. And so that, if at some point you want to do the fill, you would have to come back through and do it per the state law and the local bylaw. So, Leah, why don't you kind of give us a path of how to kind of close this portion of what this is going on right now?
Sure. So far we've handled this through basic correspondence, phone calls, Zoom meetings. So I would recommend issuing a formal enforcement order, requiring, we need to know the amount of wetlands that were filled, impacted by the fill. If there's an amount of any additional disturbance when the fill was taken out, we need to know numbers. Just saying it was put in and then taken out and it will be fine, I don't think is good enough. And we need a plan for remediation going forward. Is that area gonna need more plantings so that it can regrow okay? And I would also be suggesting peer review of the approach and for Art to take a look at the site and give his opinion as well. Because again, it's not, I don't think it's enough to just say there was fill, now the fill's gone and it'll fix itself.
So, and I would go back to your consultant, Chris, because you've been out there, you've looked at it. Do you have enough information to basically create a report to kind of describe what was done and kind of get some of the details of the square footage filled and the approximate volume and so forth?
Absolutely. Yeah. We actually went out there and did kind of a pre and post assessment, hung flags at the edge of what is still the natural wetland, and then also hung flags based primarily on soils about where we thought the historic wetland line was. We went out and located all those flags with GPS. And I do have a graphic showing that I should have sent over ahead of time.
Right.
But yeah, so the total area of fill was just under 1,600 square feet. And as Paula was saying, it ranges from about 2 to 6 feet off of the right side of that access road. I think we already have enough data to thoroughly quantify the impacts. And we're prepared to put together, a restoration plan for your approval under an enforcement order, which I think would kind of expedite the process and avoid having to go through the whole NOI process.
And I think that's the next thing I wanted to chat with is the fact that the reason why Aaliyah is kind of suggesting the enforcement order because it gives us the flexibility to take care of it without having to submit a full notice of intent. It
Agreed.
will then also document things. It's not meant to be punitive in any way. It's really meant to be used as a vehicle to conclude this portion of what's going on. And it does not have any impact if the homeowner wants to come back in the future and get it permanent to have amendments to that particular driveway access. And of course, again, as always, you'll have to, go through National Grid. So at this point, what I would like to do is just kind of get the input from the other conservation commissioners, just so that we can all be on the same page as we move ahead. So I'm going to quickly go around, just ask the different commissioners if they have any other questions or any other thoughts about how to proceed with this. So Travis, you happen to be up on the screen, so you get to get called on first.
The plan sounds good to me. I am looking at the aerials. Did any of this work occur in, what's the town north of us, Shrewsbury or Westboro?
It would be Shrewsbury, and no, there's no work in Shrewsbury. It's entirely in Grafton.
So all the work occurred within National Grid property, not the actual.
Correct. So if you're looking
Okay.
at aerial, it's that kind of narrow neck before you get into
Gotcha.
Shrewsbury as you're going north.
I think the plan laid out by the conservation agent sounds good to me.
All right, thank you. Jonathan, any other questions or additional comments?
Nope, I agree with what we just spelled out and what we talked about. So
Okay.
no.
And
other comment.
thank you. Patrick, anything else?
Nope, nothing else. That makes sense.
Okay. Emily, anything else?
Nothing for me, thank you.
At this point, I would like to just see if the representative from National Grid has any comments Obviously, we're going to be issuing most likely an enforcement order that actually will go to National Grid also. But again, the purpose of this is to document and to have a conclusion as opposed to anything punitive. So,
Sure. This is Erin Worski. Thanks for including me in the discussion here. Everything that has been mentioned, I think, sounds appropriate to us. If we could review and approve anything that is going to be happening on site, obviously we would need that. And then I think we just need to acknowledge the timing of all of this. National Grid does have 3 transmission lines that are in that right of way. There are 2 115,000 kilovolt lines and then 2 345 kilovolt lines, and all 3 of those are scheduled to go to construction in the next several months in a series, and you will be seeing those applications from us in due time. So I think just making sure that, you know, we could allow Mr. Martin some flexibility if it does have any interference with the upgrades to the lines that are being proposed. I think that's totally fine.
and again, just to your point of the schedule and things like that, and having your having you be able to review it, I think we would prefer that once we issue the enforcement order, that the part of the process is that excuse me, the homeowners wetland scientist actually coordinates with you before submitting the
Definitely.
plans and stuff, just so that it's goes through once. Try to be as efficient as we can and have this done as quickly as possible would be the way to do it. So,
Yep, fully in agreement with that. Yep.
okay.
Agreed. Yeah, Aaron and I have been in touch a little bit on this matter so far, so we will continue.
Okay. And
And
again,
if
it's less time on the commissioner's part too.
Yep.
Yes.
And if I may say, the reason why I rushed after I heard that the most reasonable option would be to remove, it was because the weather changed and the ground freeze, and I wanted to do that before we cannot do any job because the ground is frozen.
Understood. And I think, you know, at this point, what
No
we're
bad
doing-
intention.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And I think what we're trying to do is to move forward to close this out so that everyone has an opportunity to review it. And then also, you know, there's a conclusion to it and it's all documented so that moving forward, I think you'll understand, you know, in sense where the driveway goes through a sensitive area with the wetlands, that the required permits, you know, have been around for a long time. So this is, you know, just something that needs to be followed, and it doesn't prevent you from doing anything in the future. That's your personal decision. But it does a few things. It cleans up, you know, this situation, but it also makes sure that everything is recorded so that if you go to sell your house or something, there's no outstanding anything so that you wouldn't be able to sell your house. So there's a lot of reasons to have all of this done for your own purpose. And obviously, National Grid not only who cares? I realize they'll be doing some work, but they also just want to make sure they have nothing against any of their property also. So that's the
Fully
that's the goal.
understood. Yeah.
Yep.
No,
that's
and
the
I
goal.
learned my lesson. I spent already $10,000 for this
Yep.
already.
It's not really learning your lessons. It's just beginning to understand and be educated about the process. That's all. All right, Leah, I know probably the only other thing that we haven't talked about is really just having a peer reviewer go out. So can you just give me a little thought on that?
Just, I mean, I guess we can receive their remediation plan and take it from there. I just want to make sure that we're all comfortable knowing quantified impacts and then quantified amounts of
Okay.
restored area. And like I said, you know, our planting is going to be needed to help it recover, things like that. I just don't want the approach to be assumed to be that the fill's gone, so we're all set.
Right. And I think based on the wetland scientists, the fact that they've been out there, but also the fact that this process has to go through National Grid because it's their property. They'll also take a look at it. And then when we finally get it, I think that, that would give us the opportunity to review it. And if we at that time feel we need to have a peer review or go out and just double check everything, that would be fine also. But I don't think we need to do that right now. And I'll check with the commission, the commissioners on that. So Travis, any thought about having our peer reviewer go out and just take a look at it?
I mean, eventually, maybe. I guess I don't know since I haven't really seen like what the impact was, that sort of thing.
Okay. Jonathan.
Agreed. I don't know who's paying for the peer review. Would that come out of
Here's the
the
homeowners. The homeowners.
And if it's needed, again, that might be something that's, I'm not sure what Leah's thoughts are on if it's a needed thing right now, or if it's, how do we document that? Or when do we enact that? Not sure if there's a typical time frame that we put that into play, or
Would you like to review the pictures first before this decision is made? The wetland specialist that is here, Chris Frateroli, has a lot of documentation, and maybe based on the pictures that we have, you can make this decision.
So that's kind of what we're talking about. Unfortunately, he doesn't have permission to share. There's very good reasons why we control who shares things. And I'm sure Chris has witnessed those reasons why. But I think that information is important and should be submitted with the plan and so forth when the based on what the enforcement order says. So yes. So just keep on going. Patrick, any comments or opinion on the peer reviewer?
Not much more to add other than really just echo what Travis and Jonathan had said.
Okay, and Emily, anything from your perspective?
Nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay, and again, I'm certainly not saying that it's not that we say that a peer reviewer is not needed or is needed. I'm just saying, let us get all the information and maybe we can make a determination at that point. And just remember, to any of the commissioners, if you want to go out and do a site visit, you're absolutely welcome to do that. So just let Leah know if you're intending to do it. So with that, I would just want to check in with the National Grid representative to see if there's anything based on what we've said so far, if she has anything to add.
Nope, I think everything sounds reasonable on our end. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you. All right, Leah, so based on that, we'll need to take a vote on basically issuing an enforcement order, correct?
Right.
Is there anything else we need to do as far as that motion?
Nope.
Okay, having said that, if I could have a motion to issue an enforcement order requiring documentation of the amount of fill and further disturbance to remove fill and a plan for remediation going forward. And then as far as, peer review, that will be decided at a later time.
I'll move to issue a formal enforcement order for 116 Creeper Hill Road with the requirements as discussed for the wetland impact documentation and remediation plan.
All right, do I have?
second?
We have a motion and a second. A quick discussion. Leah, is there anything that we should put in the enforcement order as far as timing goes?
We have the ability to set a deadline.
Okay. So I would go back to Chris. What do you think? Give me a reasonable schedule for you to complete what you've done already, but also share it with National Grid and then submit it to us.
Absolutely. I think that would probably be 2 or 3 weeks out on my end. I'd want to give Aaron some time to look at it. Your meetings are every 2 weeks, correct?
Correct.
Maybe we do, was that you had an early January hearing that gives us almost a month to hash it all out?
I would caution you, it's holiday season. So,
You're right. You're right. Maybe we go one further than that.
yeah, and then I would also defer to the National Grid, Aaron, if you have any comment on what your turnaround time is for something like this.
Yeah, I think maybe a 2-week turnaround. I know our real estate folks would need to review it as well. So 2 weeks sounds probably appropriate for an internal review.
Okay.
So that gives you 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks to get on the the hearing dates.
So I'm thinking the first public hearing in February. So Leah, that would be, the due date would be 7 days ahead of that.
Yes.
Um,
So
I don't have- I don't-
that's,
yeah,
that's-
I'm trying to bring up a.
our first February meeting is February 6th, so by January 30.
So does January 30 works for you, Chris?
I think that sounds good to me.
Okay. And if you are not going to meet it, please reach out to us, and then we
Absolutely.
can, have a, no matter what, whether you're going to be able to submit it or submit a draft because it hasn't been reviewed by National Grid, we need to see something, and then we can work on postponing it for a couple of weeks. So.
Certainly, yeah. I think I can probably have that pulled together in the next couple of weeks, and like Aaron was saying, we'll give them time to review it before submitting anything.
Right. All right. That sounds good. So as far as the procedure wise, so we have a motion and a second. Anything else we need to add, Leah, or should we just take the vote?
Nope, go ahead and vote.
Sounds great. Do a roll call vote. So Travis,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
and I am also a yes. The motion carries. Please reach out to Leah if you have any questions. In the meantime, obviously that enforcement order will be sent to the homeowner. And can you copy National Grid on that, Leah? Or does that
Yep.
automatically goes there because they're the owner?
Yeah, I think it would be an automatic, but regardless,
Okay.
we'll make sure.
All right. That sounds good. If you have any questions, please reach out to staff and they'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you, folks. Have a good night.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye. All right. Next up.
Let's see. We have 114 Miriam Road. They want to talk about their bond. I can give you some backstory while Jan's promoting them to talk after that.
Okay.
So 114 Miriam Road, which is now turned into a few addresses because it was a common driveway for a few houses. So they began the process of requesting a COC in March of this year. That took us to July because we were waiting on a few outstanding items from them. In July, we issued a denial of that COC for lack of those outstanding items. They have restarted the COC request process with staff for a partial release for the driveway and stormwater infrastructure, which is currently before Graves for their review. They are here tonight because they have asked the question of whether or not the bond would be able to be released separate from the COC process, which is something we've never done before. There is language in the bond itself that specifically says the bond is to be held until the issuance of a COC. So the applicant has made two main points to me in support of this question. One is that they have correspondence from Jeff at Graves Engineering, where he mentions that there were some outstanding items flagged by their engineer, Quinn Engineering, but he felt that once those items were addressed and satisfied, at that point he would be comfortable with the town releasing the surety, but not until those items are addressed. So going back to our denial letter from July, the outstanding items, there were three. One was backing up portions of the driveway with soil. One was the spillway and outlet of Basin 2 being higher than designed. And the third was portions of the berm at Basin 2 were lower than designed. The current letter from Coyne Engineering for their current COC request cites two things as minor deviations. One is the edge of the driveway being in a different location from what was proposed, and the invert and finished ground elevations of the stormwater facilities deviating slightly from the approved plan. Regardless, all of those items are before Graves for review now. I don't have a letter from Graves yet on that work, whether he's in agreement with things being minor or not. That's in process, which is also why that request is not yet before the commission, because the administrative staff review side is not yet complete. The other point from the applicant was that the bond was originally put in place with the intention of covering the stormwater infrastructure. They have provided me with an email chain from years ago that does back up that statement. Well, the bond itself is structured like a standard erosion and sedimentation control bond. So there is a bit of a disconnect in the documentation, but the original breakdown of what they were paying for and why it is pertaining to stormwater infrastructure. Regardless, like I said, we don't have sign off from our reviewer on that infrastructure, so I'm not entirely comfortable saying we can release that bond. We also have never done so without also issuing a COC, whether it's partial or complete. We're also going around in circles a bit on whether they should be pursuing a partial or a complete COC. There was some outstanding work on house lots for a little while, so that's why they went the partial route. The house lots are done now. So just, I guess, as kind of a side tangent, I would kind of recommend if you are ready for a complete, maybe just pull the one that's in viewpoint now and just submit for a complete. It's the cleanest way for everyone concerned. And then we don't need to be worried that we're going to see homeowners left trying to close out their lots later.
That sounds good. So, so is the applicant, did they join us?
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
This is Kevin Quinn with Quinn Engineering. My office prepared the plans. We did submit the request to the board, and I think Leah has kind of summarized the status of this. I would note that the deviations that we picked up, very, very minimal, tenths of feet, not very significant. And the contractor had originally had issues with the installation of the outlets from Basin 2. They corrected them, and those are virtually correct. Again, within about a tenth and a half of the correct elevations. Otherwise, the site is completely stable, and the work has been done. Actually, they've actually done a very good job in my estimation. But that's what you look to your consultant for. Key to this request is the surety. The owner of the property, my client, would like to avoid carrying the bond for another year. The bond was driven at drainage, and the drainage has been shown to have been installed in accordance with the plan. So I guess the request for the board would be, I guess I'd say there's twofold. Request A is that we ask the board to release the surety, and certainly we'd like the board to act on the request for the certificate of compliance. But if it's the preference of the board that we submit a complete one, we can amend this and simply pick up the entire site. There was work going on when we initiated this on the individual sites. That's since been completed.
So, Leah, as far as Graves goes, do they have all the information they need?
We gave them everything we have now, plus our previous denial letter, so that they have the list of what was outstanding then. I know the applicant has also been pursuing some closeout with the planning board, so we have a bit of overlap between the two offices and budgeting and things like that for Graves. I believe they have what they need. I actually haven't talked directly to Jeff about this one in a few days. I did talk with the planner though, and
Okay.
I know they're trying to close out too.
So the good news is what we have for a surety doesn't need planning board's approval. So it's two separate things. I'm more concerned, and I get it, and I have no idea how the surety is, you know, how they obtained it, and you know, if they go over to January 2nd, do they have to pay for a whole nother year, that type of thing. I'm just looking at, you know, kind of your backstory and the comments. It seems that with all the lots done, it's so close to being a complete COC, and we still have one more meeting in December, correct?
No,
We don't. Okay. I know our meeting schedule got messed up because of town voting and stuff like that. So, what I was just trying to figure out is a way to get it to be a full COC, because there's no reason for us to continue on as it sounds like everything is done. And what we're waiting on is basically that final letter from Graves to say that he's all set with what the design engineer is kind of qualified as minor, deviations from the plans. So let me know, is that really what's left to do?
the letter from Jeff is the biggest piece. I'm just pulling up my letter from before.
Okay.
It's in the Dropbox too, if anyone wants to look at it. I'm just trying to remember all the pieces here. So we had asked back with the first request, we were looking for clarification then on a partial or a complete. So that is still, as we said, to be ironed out. Lots A and D are not on the current as-built plan. This is what I wrote back in July. So if that has changed with the one before us, I just don't have that in front of me right now. Then it was the outstanding items from their engineer's letter, which he said are all set now, but we're waiting for Jeff to double check those. Then we had no disturb signage and barrier, as well as the open space granite, rebar, and signage weren't shown on the plans. They have since sent in a bunch of photos to show that those are in, and I've seen them myself in the field. I did have one question about those signs. Was one of the locations, so because when you send photos, it's a little hard to gauge context within the site, but are some of those no disturb signs along the driveway? Or were they all, like, I know you have another wetland over in the woods.
Right. Madam Chair, Kevin Quinn again. My client installed those signs. If Eric Gilmore should be in attendance, who's going to be in attendance, his people installed those signs. I would ask him to maybe comment on that.
Yeah, hi there. Eric Gilmore, Gilmore Building Company. Those signs are, I do not believe that they are along that driveway.
Okay, I'll just have to circle back to the plan to just be sure that everything went in the spot it's supposed to go. But yes, the main part is it partial or is it complete? Do the plans reflect if it's partial or complete, the as-built plans? And Jeff's letter. And then there's just the small question about location of signage. But I'll circle back up to the plans to check that one out.
Yeah, what we just, if I may, the which we has talked about and Kevin have both talked about, at the time when we started this process, we were trying to get the partial release for essentially the stormwater system, so that we didn't have to have, my client is the same as Kevin's, pay for another year of bond, of having that bond when the work is all done. When Joe Leiden and I, we're talking back in 2016, he was the one that provided the paperwork and worked with myself and with Jeff over at Graves. And we even provided, here's a breakdown of the costs for the stormwater. Jeff approved that and said, yes, that looks to be looks to be acceptable. And so everything was always, they wanted to make sure that, I mean, it went in as an erosion control bond because they were trying to figure out how to tie it together, so to speak, back at that time. And so that's what they ended up doing. And so when we started this process, we're like, okay, house lots aren't done yet, but the roadway is done. The erosion, the stormwater is 100% done. It just made sense to try to, like, nobody had indicated that that was not something that, or that was anything that was unusual to do. Okay. So that's why we stayed with that. As we got delayed into this fall, we were talking about, okay, we've already gone down this road with the partial. Now, since that time, we've recently finished up, not recently, but end of summer, early fall, finished up lot work. But we didn't want to complicate the matters by saying, okay, now we're coming in for completion, a complete certificate of completion, because we'd already gone down the road with the partial. We were trying to work our way through that partial. And we didn't want it to drag through, thinking that, okay, by the time the engineers do their work, get out there, get their as-built, et cetera, get it to you, go through the process, that we may go through to the end of next year, in which case, Kevin and my client is going to be paying for another year of a bond that is absolutely useless because everything is all in there. And so that's where we kind of stayed the course. Now, the idea and what we're going to do going forward here, irregardless of whether you guys say yes, go ahead and you can do a statement that would allow us to release that bond, is that we will then be, going forward to complete, request a complete certificate of completion and clean all that up over the upcoming months with, Kevin and having Graves do their review process and so on and so forth. I don't know, as you guys know, we're, Gilmore Building Company has been in this town, now for 18 years, and we don't plan on leaving anytime soon. And so this is something that, we're not going to be leaving the homeowners and, to have to clean this up. The reputation is such that's what we're going to do. I'm just trying to save some unnecessary costs if it's possible.
And I'm also trying to save, just the process and make it more efficient and so forth. It doesn't, then you end up paying for a second peer review and other things. So let me just quickly go around the commissioners just to see if they have any comments or suggestions about this. So Jonathan.
Is it more of just the poor timing that, if they go over into the new year and we don't, could we do something with the bond that allows them to get us the information to process it so they can cancel it by the end of the year? Or if it rolls over, is it just, are we not going to be able to achieve that before the first of the year? Whatever's needed to close the bond out or to nullify the bond. Is that this only this action here? I feel like it's just a poor timing, right? I don't know if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'm saying it's a disconnect of the timing of getting information and trying to figure out a process to make sure that we just have never we've just never released a bond prior to having a COC. It's just it's that kind of conflict. But
we don't have a precedent for it, then I don't think we should change that. If we've done it in past examples or instances, then there's a precedent set, but it doesn't sound like there's a precedent set. It sounds like we've got a rule that we stick to, and it's unfortunate the timing, or it seems to be unfortunate, but that's my take, is that if we've done it in the past, maybe we should continue it, or at least entertain that if there's something in the shoulder. But then how big does that shoulder season to the end of the year get, where people are now coming to us, right before the bond's about to renew, and it just could set a poor precedent. And if we don't have one in place already, then I don't see the means to do it with this instance, unfortunately.
Okay. Travis, your kind of thoughts on this?
I feel like whether the bond says it's for stormwater infrastructure or erosion and sediment control measures, I feel like the stormwater infrastructure might not operate correctly if we don't have the site stabilized and the bond ensures that. I mean, it sounds like the site is stable. But Jonathan brings up a pretty good point. If the bond, which I'm looking at it, looks like an official legal document, says you need the COC, I don't see how we can break that apart.
Okay. Patrick.
That's my thought.
No, that's all good. Patrick.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I kind of will echo Jonathan and Travis again. I struggle with overriding what the bond says.
Okay, thanks. Emily.
I agree with everyone, and not changing precedent if the precedent we have works or has
Okay,
worked so
thanks.
far.
Thanks. So, yeah, Eric, just kind of,
Yeah.
again, I think we want to, it seems like you're very close, and I understand why you're here and you're asking this, but for us, it's just kind of changing how we do things. I don't really want to know how much money it is and so forth. You know better that, the cost of that bond and so forth, whether, going through two separate processes with, requesting a COC, whichever is more valuable to you. I don't know that. And to be honest, it's not driving me. I was trying to, go through the commissioners and try to see if there's a way to kind of get the information that we need, but it seems more like the timing and the public hearings don't line up with it. So I don't know what else, unless you can come up with a different way of getting things in. And I guess the big question is yeah, the lots are done now, but is there an as-built, and is there sufficient information for that to have kind of that wrapped up?
Madam Chair, Kevin Quinn. The answer to your question is we don't have all the information for the lots yet, but we certainly can't provide that in a timeline that would work for us. It sounds to me like members are unwilling to release the surety based on not issuing a certificate of compliance.
Correct. Yeah.
If that's the case, I think, Eric, I'll let you speak. Interrupt me if I'm speaking, but I think we would want to withdraw the request and resubmit a complete request. But that would come to you sometime next year. We'd have to arrange. We have to make sure we have the information to document the lot.
And that timing of that obviously is based on your schedule and what you need to do to get the sufficient information for everything done.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Am I not speaking out of turn when I say? My read right now is that I haven't heard a member say that they're willing to release the surety in the absence of the compliance. That's not going to happen, as I see it. Correct.
Correct. And that's kind of why I polled everyone, because
Yep.
And I was trying to think of ways to do a different process, and I just can't come up with one, to be quite honest.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay.
So, yeah, and as far as, obviously, I think doing a single COC would be, from our perspective, the best way to do it, since you're so close.
Mhm.
And, it's unfortunate with the timing and the bond and so forth, but unfortunately, we don't feel that we can release that at this time.
Okay.
So.
Well, thank you for the consideration.
Yep. So Leah, do we need to vote on that?
It was just a discussion item, so
Okay.
I don't think so. I do just have a question though. And I don't need to know dollar amounts, but I mean, would a bond work similar to, say like you own a car and then part of the way through the year you get rid of that car, you get an abatement on your taxes. So if we're going to hit January 1 and you're going to have to renew the bond, but then you close it out by, say, the end of January, do you then not have to have funded the whole year's worth? I'm just
No,
curious how it works.
It's a one-time payment. So it's kind of like a builder's risk policy.
Yeah.
You pay it one time at the beginning of the year, and then the next, you've got to, if you're still building, you build again, you pay again. There are no, there's no reimbursements for, percentage of time used, that kind of thing under insurance.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So it's a one-time payment that needs to go out. It'll cover for another year. Yeah, I get it. It's just unfortunate because and it's kind of been a little weird because the planning board helped set it up, but it was really being held by, it's you guys that had to kind of administer over it, so to speak. So there was some confusion in that, but we're talking about, 2016 with a whole bunch of people that aren't here anymore.
Right.
So it's, so it was always the intention back then, even though the legal document doesn't seem to back that up with Joe and I was, all right, get it in, make sure you get things stabilized, then we'll get rid of it and go forward. But I understand your position without having, those folks sitting there, it's impossible because you're left with the paperwork that's there. So
Right.
I get it. Again, I thank you. I thank Leah for her efforts and the opportunity to at least bring it forth.
Yeah. And usually we're, since then we're a little bit better at it because what we don't want to do is double dip. If the planning board's asking for something, we don't want to double anything that they're asking for. So
Right.
I think we've gotten better at coordinating that and working with them. So yeah, other than going with a cash bond or something, I don't see any other kind of way around it, actually.
Okay.
So, all right.
Okay.
Well, good
All
luck,
right,
and
thank
we'll see you early next year at some point.
All right. We appreciate your time.
All right.
Yep,
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, Leah. Other action items? Just the minutes. Okay. All right. I hope everyone had an opportunity to read them and review them. If you have any comments or questions, we can discuss that. Otherwise, can I have a motion?
We have two sets of minutes.
Correct.
Approve them both at once.
Yes.
Move to approve November 14th and November 28th meeting minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Not seeing any. We'll do a roll call vote. Travis,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Jonathan.
Yes.
I am also a yes. That motion passes. Anything left?
Yeah, I just have one question for the commission. So this goes back to another like standard operations kind of question. Typically applicants have our order of conditions and bylaw permits in hand. Then they end up asking staff if they can go ahead and cut trees before their erosion control goes in. And my answer is always you can cut, but you can't take stumps out until your erosion control is in. A future applicant has asked if they would possibly have any leeway to cut trees ahead of even receiving permits and having permits from us in hand. My initial thought to them was no. First of all, you definitely couldn't remove stumps, but I thought it was unlikely the commission would even allow a whole site's worth of trees to be cut without permits in hand because stormwater becomes a factor.
So it's a good question. It's really murky and muddy and a few other things. So as a landowner, you can cut trees, but once it begins to, you can't cut trees in the wetlands. Then you're like, okay, if you cut trees in the buffer, then to be quite honest, I would have to look up to see if either our local bylaw or if tree cutting and I say tree cutting, I'm separating that from tree clearing, which would be the grubbing and so forth. That someone go out and cut a tree, probably in the outer 100-foot buffer, but
Yeah.
that's not what this. That's not what the question is. It's to clear cut the whole site.
Correct, and it will be large. It's going to need a stormwater permit.
Right.
That feels like a slippery slope to say yes to without knowing things.
Well, I appreciate the fact they came and asked the question. But yeah, I the unintended consequences of doing a tree here and there is very different than, cutting all of the trees on a site.
Yeah.
I don't, from a legal standpoint, if you're outside the 100-foot, how that would fall under our jurisdiction. I don't know the answer. I just never.
Then I guess it depends if we call anything out in the stormwater bylaw itself. So I can check a few places.
The bylaw, I happen to have it up. It says for projects involving steep slopes, highly erodible soils, et cetera, commission may require a wider undisturbed buffer to ensure protection of wetland resources. So if the site's if it's a slope site going down into wetlands, then yeah, I guess I would say no without knowing more information.
Yeah.
So if they're within 25 feet, definitely no, but depending on the site. Yeah.
Like, to me, it all depends upon where the resource areas are and the site itself, and in what constitutes development. It's just kind of a very gray area. I don't have the answers to that.
Everyone loves to find the gray areas, though.
You're right.
Your job would be real easy if no one was doing that, right, Leon? Everyone's trying to find a loophole somehow, right? What was their reasoning, or did they not give you one? Weather or something?
It's mostly just about time sensitivity for the project. You will be seeing this project. I'm not at liberty to say what it is right
and
now.
that's fine. I mean, why not do a suggestion of doing a quick RDA?
For the trees, if that's what it comes to.
Right.
Yeah.
Then that's at least a process.
Yeah.
And at least we could require some erosion control, because it's not, yeah, we'd like to see the trees maintained, but it's not our trees. So
Yeah. Okay, got it.
however, maybe something like that. And again, yeah, it is, we don't need to know what the site is or anything. It's interesting question, and I don't have the answer to that, because typically you don't do that. That's all.
Right.
So, okay.
All right, understood.
Any other questions that you want to stump us with?
No, no pun intended, right?
I do that all the time. And I have a weird brain. I have a weird brain. But yes.
In this instance, are we the Lorax? We speak for the trees?
And the wetlands and the animals.
Right. Yeah. If it's in a wetland resource area or buffer or other thing, then we definitely do. It's just unfortunate we don't extend beyond that. To the other part that Leah was talking about, the stormwater, that's different, because if you take down multiple acres of trees, you are. I do not know the way the wetlands, the stormwater bylaw talks more about disturbance.
Right.
And I bet you the disturbance isn't described as tree cutting.
Right.
I don't know. Those are all good things. It's a good thing to think about, and so that we can tighten up the definitions and stuff.
True.
But
yeah.
But anyways, okay. Anything else?
Nope.
So when is our next public hearing?
January 9.
Okay. All right. And that's just because of the holidays.
Correct.
Okay. Is there any
I'm
issues?
going to need a reminder for that. That's like a month away.
Yeah.
And I was just going to ask, is there any issues with meeting the 20 days or 21 days, whatever it is?
So we actually have a clause in all our applications that folks are signing off on that say sometimes we're not going to meet the 21 days, and
Okay.
they're reading that and signing that they are okay with that.
Okay.
I don't know how technically, how strong that stands, but that's our approach for now. We haven't had anyone
Right.
file for that deadline anyway, which is
Yep.
Monday.
Right. So does everyone understand what I'm talking about? Is it 20 or 21 days? I always flip
21.
I always flip issuing versus the application.
They're
Everyone knows
both 21.
they are. I thought one was 20, one was 21.
Nope.
Anyways, but everyone knows what I'm talking about, right? It's by law, as far as the regulations for the wetlands is that if you submit an NOI, you have 21 days to be held to be heard in front of a public hearing. So those are the type of things every once in a while we'll get caught with that. And so staff is, coming up with a way to make sure that people know that, hey, it's not going to happen within 21 days.
And I will
And then you
just
can sign off on it.
and I will just throw out there that what initiated us having that clause for folks to sign isn't even for the months where we have one meeting like this. It's actually the fact that the newspaper we use only publishes on Thursdays, the Grafton News, and then
Yep.
so you go back from a hearing, you can't go back to the previous Thursday because that's not 7 days ahead to put a legal ad in the paper. We have to go back 2 Thursdays for the
Right.
ad to be at least 7 days ahead, then go back to the paper's deadline, and it all ends up backing up to like nearly 21 days in and of itself. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Well, hopefully that's going to get changed, not in the 2 distance feature. They've definitely talked about changing the ad in the paper since no one gets papers anymore.
That would be wonderful.
So there has been efforts to say, instead of advertising in the local newspaper, is to advertise through websites, and whether that's like a standardized one for the state, or whether it is your town website, you would put all the notifications. You still have to do the abutter notification, but as far as the public notice, which is just in a local paper if you happen to have one, or then you spend a lot of money to put it in a major newspaper.
Right.
There've been a lot of discussions about updating that. I don't know.
Pretty sure we voted on that at town hall to change it, or at town meeting.
No, this would have to be on the state level. It's a
Oh,
state. It's
okay,
a state.
never mind.
Yeah, it's a state regulation, but they've talked about it for all the kind of ads that are needed instead of. I mean, come on. It was the last time you picked up a newspaper,
Yeah.
and I don't mean
we
that as a
we do put them on the webpage already, so we're
Right.
already good to go.
Right. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's the times have changed and the regulations haven't caught up. So hopefully someday soon. Okay. Having said that, it sounds like we don't meet till after the holidays. So other than that, I think there's only one motion left.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Yeah, a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Travis,
Yes.
Jonathan,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Patrick.
Yes.
I am also a yes, and that carries unanimously.